Captain Taiyang Ko stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable and stared at the star map. The blue dots represented his fleet, 23 ships. That was everything humanity had in this sector of space. The red dots showed the enemy, 847 ships. He did not need to be good at math to understand the problem. "Captain, the council transmission is coming through," said Lieutenant Nari Song from her station. She was young, only 24, but she was the best weapons officer Taeyang had ever worked with. Her fingers moved across the controls with the speed of someone who had been born for this work. Taeyang nodded. The image appeared on the main screen. 5 alien faces looked back at him. They were the Galactic Council, the government that ruled most of the known galaxy. Humanity had joined them only 20 years ago. 20 years was nothing to species that lived for centuries. "Captain Ko," one of them said. Its voice came through the translator as calm and cold. "The Vorn Empire has declared its intention to remove humanity from the colony worlds. The Council has reviewed their claim and finds it valid under the Covenant of Civilized Warfare." Taeyang felt his jaw tighten. "Valid? They want to kill millions of civilians." "They have offered terms of surrender," another council member said. "If humanity returns to Earth and abandons all colony worlds, no lives will be lost." "This is generous by galactic standards." "Generous," Taeyang repeated. He wanted to say more, but Admiral Hanabake had warned him about this. The council did not care about human anger. They had their rules, their traditions, their ways of doing things. Those ways were 10,000 years old. "The Vorn Grand Armada will arrive at the Zephyr Nebula in 72 hours. The council member continued. "We advise you to withdraw and allow a peaceful transition. Fighting will only cause unnecessary death." The transmission ended. Taeyang looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him. They all knew what the message meant. The council was not going to help. Humanity was alone. Commander Jinwoo Park spoke up from the engineering station. He was 41 years old and had kept the Indomitable running through 3 major battles and countless smaller fights. "Captain, if we try to fight that fleet in open space, we will last maybe 10 minutes. "I know," Taeyang said. He pulled up the file on his personal display. It was called the Covenant of Civilized Warfare. Inside were 47 rules that every spacefaring species was supposed to follow during war. He had read them before, but he read them again now. Rule 1. All parties must formally declare their intentions before combat. Rule 2. Terms of honorable surrender must be offered. Rule 3. Communication channels must remain open. The list went on and on. Rules about what weapons you could use. Rules about what targets were acceptable. Rules about how ships had to move in formation. Rules about everything. Taeyang had fought in the colony wars back when humans were only fighting each other. Those wars had been brutal, quick, dirty. There had been no rules except one: survive. When someone tried to kill you, you killed them first. You used whatever worked. "Pull up the tactical data on the Vorn fleet," Taeyang said. Nari's fingers danced across her controls. The enemy fleet appeared on the screen in detail. Each ship was marked with its class and capabilities. The Vorn had battleships, carriers, destroyers, and cruisers. They followed the standard galactic designs. Everyone in the galaxy used similar ships because the Council had decided centuries ago what the proper way to build a warship was. "They will come through the nebula in formation," Jinwoo said. Studying the data, "The nebula is the only way to reach our colonies quickly. If we can hold them there for 72 hours, most of the civilians can evacuate." "Hold them for 72 hours," Taeyang repeated. "With 23 ships against 847. "Those are our orders," said Nari quietly. Taeyang looked at the Covenant of Civilized Warfare again. He thought about humanity's history. Humans had always been good at one thing: surviving when they should not have survived. They did it by being clever, by being ruthless when necessary, by ignoring what others said was impossible. "Nari, I want you to pull up every weapon system we have," Taeyang said. "I do not care if it is military or civilian technology. Mining lasers, tractor beams, anything that can be turned into a weapon." "Sir, mining lasers are not approved for military use under Rule 18, Nari said. "I know what the rules say," Taeyang replied. "I want you to ignore them." The bridge went quiet. Jinwoo looked up from his station. "Captain, if we violate the Covenant, the Council will consider us war criminals." "The Council already abandoned us," Taeyang said. Admiral Bayek gave me discretion to do whatever is necessary to buy time for the evacuation. I am using that discretion." He stood up and walked to the front of the bridge. His crew was watching him carefully. They were good people. They had families back home. They had lives they wanted to return to. But they also understood what was at stake. "The Vorn expect us to fight by the rules," Taiyang said. "They expect us to line up our ships, exchange fire at proper distances, and surrender when we have taken too much damage. They think this will be easy because they have done this for thousands of years." He turned to face his crew. "But humans have never done easy. We have always done whatever it takes to survive. So we are going to do something the galaxy has never seen before. We are going to fight to win." "How?" Nari asked. Taeyang smiled. It was not a nice smile. "We are going to break every single rule they have. We are going to cheat, lie, and fight dirty. We are going to use every trick we can think of. And when they expect us to surrender, we are going to hit them harder." Jinwoo stood up. "I can rig the reactor cores to work as proximity mines. It violates Rule 28, but it will work." "Do it," Taeyang said. "I can reprogram our mining drones to carry nuclear warheads," Nari added. "Autonomous weapons are forbidden under Rule 7, but we have 500 drones in storage." "Perfect," Taeyang said. "What else?" For the next hour, the crew worked through ideas. Each one violated the covenant. Each one would make the council declare them criminals. Each one might help them survive. When they were done, Taeyang sent a message to Admiral Bayek. He told her everything they planned to do. Her response came back quickly. It was only 3 words: "Give them hell." Taeyang looked at the countdown timer. 68 hours until the Vorn arrived. 68 hours to turn a nebula into a death trap. 68 hours to prepare for the most insane battle in human history. "All ships," he said into the fleet channel. "This is Captain Ko. In 3 days we are going to face an enemy that outnumbers us 40-1. They think they have already won. They think we will follow the rules and die politely. They are wrong. We are going to show them what humans do when their backs are against the wall. We are going to show them that survival does not care about rules. Prepare for combat." Ko out. He sat back in his chair and looked at the star map one more time. 23 blue dots. 847 red dots. Impossible odds, but humanity had beaten impossible odds before. The Vorn Grand Armada arrived exactly on schedule. Supreme Battlemaster Korthak watched from his flagship as his fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 847 ships arranged in battle groups, each one following the patterns that had been used for 10,000 years. It was beautiful. It was proper. It was how civilized species conducted war. "Scan for the human fleet," Korthak ordered. "They are in the nebula, Battlemaster," his sensor officer reported. 23 vessels. "They are not responding to our hails." Korthak's skin changed color slightly, showing mild annoyance. "Broadcast the formal challenge again. They must acknowledge our intentions according to Rule 3. The communications officer tried again. Still no response from the humans. Instead, something else came through the speakers. It was loud. It was chaotic. It sounded like primitive drums and screaming instruments. The communications officer quickly lowered the volume. "What is that noise?" Korthak demanded. "It appears to be human music, Battlemaster. They are broadcasting it on civilian entertainment frequencies." Korthak had fought in 17 campaigns over his 40-year career. He had never encountered an enemy that responded to a formal battle challenge with music. He decided the humans were simply ignorant of proper protocols. It did not matter. They would learn or they would die. All ships advance into the nebula. Maintain proper formation spacing per Rule 12. Weapons officers remember that damaged vessels attempting retreat must not be fired upon per Rule 15. The Grand Armada moved forward. The Zephyr Nebula was thick with gas and dust. It made sensors less effective, but Vorn technology was good. They could still see clearly enough to fight. The nebula could not hide 23 human ships. Inside the nebula, aboard the Indomitable, Captain Taiyang watched the Vorn fleet enter his trap. "They are so predictable," he said softly. "Perfect formations. Perfect spacing. They have done this exact same way for centuries." "They are advancing on our position," Nari reported. "Should we respond to their hails?" "No," Taeyang said. "Keep playing the music. It will confuse them." Jinwoo looked up from his engineering station. "The mining drones are ready. 500 of them, each carrying a nuclear warhead. They are programmed to look like debris and floating rocks. Deploy them along their approach path, Taeyang ordered. The drones floated out into the nebula. They did not move like military drones. They tumbled slowly, looking exactly like pieces of broken asteroids and space junk. The Vorn sensors detected them but dismissed them as harmless debris. This was exactly what Taeyang wanted. The Vorn scout ships moved ahead of the main fleet. They were careful and professional. They scanned each sector before declaring it safe. When they reached the area where the drones were floating, they saw nothing unusual. Then Nari pressed a button. 50 nuclear explosions lit up the nebula at once. The Vorn scout ships simply vanished in the blasts. The shockwaves damaged several more ships behind them. In 10 seconds, 17 Vorn vessels were destroyed. On the Vorn flagship, alarms screamed. Korthak stared at the tactical display in shock. What happened? Report. The debris was not debris, Battlemaster. They were autonomous weapons disguised as rocks. This violates Rule 7, Rule 9, and Rule 11. Korthak felt something he had not felt in many years. Uncertainty. Autonomous weapons had been banned for 8,000 years. Deception in warfare was considered shameful. Using civilian mining drones as military weapons was unthinkable. Yet the humans had done all three things in one attack. They do not know the rules, Korthak said. They are primitives. Continue the advance. All ships remain in formation. But Taeyang had no intention of letting them advance peacefully. Jinwoo, activate the tractor beams. Yes, sir, Jinwoo said with a grin. The human ships had been fitted with industrial tractor beams normally used to move asteroids in mining operations. These beams were incredibly powerful. Now Jinwoo used them to grab large chunks of space rock floating in the nebula and hurl them at the Vorn fleet. The rocks were not sophisticated weapons. They were just big and moving very fast. When they hit Vorn shields, the shields held, but it took energy. When dozens of rocks hit at once, shields began to fail. When shields failed, the rocks punched through hulls. This is ridiculous. A Vorn ship captain screamed on the command channel. They are throwing rocks at us. This violates Rule 23. Hold formation, Korthak ordered. But he could hear the confusion in his officers' voices. This was not how battles were supposed to go. There were procedures, protocols, ways things were done. The humans were ignoring all of it. Taeyang looked at his tactical display. The Vorn fleet was slowing down, being more cautious. Good. Every minute they wasted was another minute for civilians to evacuate. Time to make them even more confused, Taeyang said. Nari, target their command ships. Sir, Rule 14 says we must not specifically target command and control vessels, Nari pointed out. I know what it says, Taeyang replied. Fire. The Indomitable's weapons locked onto the Vorn command ships deep in the enemy formation. These ships coordinated the fleet and controlled communications. They were supposed to be protected by an unwritten agreement that you did not kill the people, trying to organize a proper battle. Taeyang killed them anyway. The human ships used a mix of weapons that should never have been on military vessels. Mining lasers that could cut through asteroid rock also cut through ship armor. Welding torches designed for space station construction became close-range weapons. Industrial cutting tools became missiles. 3 Vorn command ships exploded. The rest scattered, breaking their perfect formation to escape. Korthak watched his fleet begin to lose cohesion. Ship captains were making their own decisions without proper coordination. Some were advancing, some were retreating, some were trying to maintain formation while others abandoned it. This is chaos, Korthak shouted. Restore order! Reform the battle groups! But restoring order took time, and while the Vorn tried to reorganize, the human ships struck again and again. They appeared from the gas clouds, fired, and disappeared before the Vorn could respond. They did not fight like military vessels. They fought like pirates or guerrillas. Worse, the humans were using electronic warfare that violated Rule 19. They jammed Vorn communications. They sent false signals. They made Vorn sensors see ships that were not there and miss ships that were. On the Indomitable, Jinwoo was laughing. Look at them! They are so confused. They keep trying to shoot at fake sensor returns while we hit them from behind. How many have we destroyed? Taeyang asked. 43 confirmed kills, Nari reported. Another 20 damaged enough that they are withdrawing. Taeyang nodded. 63 enemy ships out of action, and they had only lost 2 human vessels. The math was starting to look better. But he knew this was just the beginning. The Vorn still had over 700 ships. They would adapt. They would figure out counters to his tactics. He needed to stay ahead of them. Send the retreat signal, Taeyang ordered. Sir? Nari looked confused. Send a signal that we are retreating deeper into the nebula. Make it look like we are running scared. Nari did as ordered. The human fleet began pulling back, making it obvious they were withdrawing. On the Vorn flagship, officers reported the development to Korthak. They are retreating, Battlemaster. Should we pursue? Korthak considered. Every instinct told him to be cautious. But he had already lost over 60 ships to an enemy that should have been destroyed in minutes. He needed to show strength. He needed to win this battle quickly before the humans made his fleet look like fools. All ships pursue, Korthak ordered. Do not let them escape deeper into the nebula. The Vorn fleet charged forward. They abandoned their careful formations and raced after the human ships. They wanted revenge. They wanted to restore their honor. They flew directly into the second part of Taeyang's trap. Now, Taeyang said calmly, hidden throughout the nebula were small satellites that Jinwoo had deployed over the past 3 days. They activated all at once. Some created false sensor readings, some jammed communications, some projected holograms of ships, some released clouds of metallic chaff that made everything on sensors look like a target. The Vorn fleet suddenly could not tell what was real and what was fake. Ships collided with each other trying to avoid phantom enemies. Others fired at false targets, wasting ammunition and revealing their positions. And while they were blind and confused, the human ship struck from every direction at once. Korthak watched his battle display descend into madness. His fleet was tearing itself apart. The humans had turned the nebula itself into a weapon. He sent an emergency message to the Galactic Council. The humans are not fighting according to the Covenant. They show no honor. They violate every rule of civilized warfare. The Council's response came back hours later. Then defeat them and teach them the proper way. But as Korthak watched another 10 ships explode on his display, he began to wonder if teaching was possible when the students kept killing the teachers. 36 hours into the battle, Supreme Battlemaster Korthak sat in his command chair and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. His Grand Armada had lost 189 ships. The humans had lost only 4. The numbers made no sense. The situation made no sense. Battlemaster, we are receiving another transmission from the humans, his communications officer reported. What do they say? They are not saying anything, sir. They are showing us something. The main screen flickered. Images appeared. Burning Vorn ships. Escape pods drifting through space. Vorn warriors floating dead in the void. And over all of it, strange human music that sounded like screaming and wailing. The images were horrible. The music was worse. Turn it off, Korthak ordered. But the transmission was being broadcast on every frequency. Every ship in his fleet was seeing it. This violated rules 29 through 31. Psychological warfare, terror tactics, attempts to break enemy morale. These were forbidden because they were cruel and uncivilized. The humans did not seem to care about civilized behavior. On the Indomitable, Nari watched the reaction to her psychological warfare program. They are very upset, Captain. Good, Taeyang said. Upset enemies make mistakes. What is our status on the minefield? Jinwoo pulled up a display. Throughout the nebula, thousands of small objects were floating. They looked like normal space debris, rocks, ice chunks, broken pieces of destroyed ships. But hidden inside many of them were explosives. Some were nuclear mines. Some were conventional explosives. Some were just containers of chemicals that would explode when mixed. We have turned this entire section of the nebula into a death trap, Jinwoo said proudly. They cannot move anywhere without hitting something. And the gas composition? Taeyang asked. That is my favorite part, Jinwoo said with a grin. He pulled up another display showing the chemical makeup of the nebula gas. We have been slowly releasing certain bacteria into the gas. They are from Earth. Common gut bacteria that we all have in our bodies. Taeyang raised an eyebrow. You put human gut bacteria into a nebula? Yes, sir. These bacteria consume some gases and produce others. Over the past day and a half, they have been changing the chemical composition of the nebula. The Vorn sensors were calibrated for the original gas mixture. Now their sensors are giving them bad data. Our sensors, which Nari reprogrammed for the new gas mixture, work perfectly. You weaponized bacteria, Taeyang said slowly. Technically, the bacteria are not weapons, Jinwoo said. They are harmless to all living things. They just eat gas and make different gas. But yes, we are using them to gain a tactical advantage. This probably violates Rule 44 about biological agents in warfare. Taiyang laughed. It was the first time he had laughed since the battle began. You terraformed a nebula in the middle of a battle. I prefer to call it nebula forming, Jinwoo replied. Nari spoke up. Captain, the Vorn are attempting another organized push. They have reformed 3 of their battle groups and are advancing on our position. Taiyang studied the tactical display. The Vorn were learning. They were adapting. Korthak was a good commander. He was starting to understand that the old rules did not apply to this battle. He was beginning to fight more cautiously. Time to remind them why caution will not save them, Taiyang said. Jinwoo, I need you to do something very dangerous. Those are my favorite kind of orders, sir. The battleship Sejong took heavy damage in the last engagement. How long until she loses structural integrity? Jinwoo checked his engineering displays. Maybe 20 minutes. The reactor is unstable. We need to evacuate the crew. Not yet, Taiyang said. I need the Sejong to ram that Vorn carrier. The bridge went silent. Everyone stared at Taiyang. Nari spoke carefully. Sir, deliberate ship-to-ship collision violates Rule 33. I know, Taiyang said. Contact the Sejong. Tell them to evacuate crew to escape pods but keep them inside the ship. When they are 5 seconds from impact, launch all pods at once. The crew will survive. The carrier will not. The captain of the Sejong understood immediately. His ship was dying anyway. At least this way, it would take an enemy carrier with it. He positioned his ship on a collision course and increased speed to maximum. The Vorn carrier detected the approach. They tried to move. They tried to destroy the Sejong, but the battleship had diverted all power to shields and engines. Vorn weapons could not stop it in time. At the last second, dozens of escape pods burst from the Sejong. The crew escaped. The ship did not slow down. Korthak watched in horror as the human battleship crashed through the carrier's shields and tore the massive vessel in half. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the nebula for thousands of kilometers. They used their own ship as a missile, Korthak whispered. They sacrificed a battleship to kill one of our carriers. His tactical officer checked the numbers. The carrier held 140 fighters and 60 support ships, Battlemaster. The humans traded 1 damaged battleship for effectively 200 of our vessels. It was insane. It was barbaric. It was also brutally effective. While Korthak was still processing what had happened, the human fleet struck again. They were no longer fighting like a military fleet. They were fighting like every ship was independent, making its own decisions, using whatever tactics worked. 1 human destroyer flew directly at a Vorn battleship, fired all its weapons at once, then used its faster engines to escape before the battleship could respond. This violated at least 3 rules about proper engagement distances and weapon usage. Another human ship released cargo containers filled with thousands of ball bearings. The containers accelerated the bearings to tremendous speeds, then released them in a cloud. When the bearings hit Vorn shields at those speeds, they punched through like bullets through paper. This violated Rule 24 about kinetic bombardment. Nari had discovered something interesting about Vorn missiles. They used sophisticated computer systems to guide themselves to targets. These computers could be hacked if you knew how. She had spent 3 days learning how. Now when Vorn ships fired missiles at human vessels, Nari hacked the missiles and turned them around. The missiles flew back at the ships that launched them. Vorn crews watched in confusion and horror as their own weapons killed them. This violated Rule 25 about digital warfare, but the worst violation came when Jinwoo activated his special weapon. Captain, I have been working on something, Jinwoo said. Do you remember that alien power core we salvaged 3 years ago? The one that was banned 8,000 years ago? I thought we destroyed that, Taiyang said. I may have forgotten to destroy it, Jinwoo admitted. Instead, I studied it, and I figured out how to make it into a directed electromagnetic pulse weapon. An EMP weapon? Taiyang asked. Jinwoo, those are absolutely forbidden under Rule 45. Yes, sir. Which is why I only built one, and I have been saving it for the right moment. I believe this is the right moment. Taiyang looked at the tactical display. The Vorn were massing their remaining ships for a final large-scale assault. They were going to throw everything at the human fleet in one coordinated attack. Do it, Taiyang ordered. Jinwoo activated his weapon. A massive pulse of electromagnetic energy burst from the Indomitable and spread through the nebula. It was carefully tuned to affect Vorn technology while leaving human systems mostly intact. 80 Vorn ships simply stopped working. Their computers crashed. Their engines shut down. Their weapons went offline. They drifted helplessly in space while their crews scrambled to restart basic systems. All ships, fire on the disabled vessels, Taeyang ordered. Sir, Nari said quietly, Rule 47 says we must show mercy to defeated enemies. Those ships are helpless. Taeyang looked at her. His expression was hard. If we let them recover, they will kill us. We cannot afford mercy. It was the most difficult order he had ever given, but he gave it anyway. The human fleet fired on the helpless ships until they exploded, or their crews abandoned ship in escape pods. Korthak watched 20 more ships die. He understood now. These humans were not trying to win a civilized battle. They were trying to survive at any cost. They would break every rule, use every forbidden tactic, and show no mercy because they believed they could not afford to. He sent another message to the Galactic Council. This one was simpler. Send help. The humans are more dangerous than we imagined. Meanwhile, Admiral Hana Bayek was implementing her part of the plan. While Korthak's attention was focused on the battle in the nebula, Hana sent Earth's reserve fleet to attack Vorn supply bases and logistics hubs in neutral space. This violated Rules 36 through 38. Attacking non-combatants, operating in neutral territory, striking at economic targets instead of military ones. The Vorn Empire suddenly faced attacks on two fronts. Their mighty armada was trapped in a nebula, and their home space was under assault. The galaxy watched the battlefields in shock. Some species were horrified by humanity's tactics. Others were terrified. A few were quietly impressed. The humans had been in galactic society for only 20 years. In that time, they had learned one important lesson. The galaxy's rules were designed by species that could afford to lose gracefully. Humanity could not afford to lose at all. So they fought to win, rules be damned. 58 hours into the battle, Supreme Battlemaster Korthak made a decision that went against everything he had been taught. He was going to break the rules himself. Prepare all ships for synchronized weapons fire, he ordered. I want every gun, every laser, every cannon to fire at maximum power into the nebula gas itself. His officers stared at him. Battlemaster, if we do that, we will ignite the entire nebula. The explosion will destroy our own ships as well as the humans. I know, Korthak said quietly. But we have already lost over 400 ships. The humans have shown us that following the rules leads only to death, so we will show them what happens when we abandon the rules as well. He knew what this meant. Thousands of his own warriors would die in the fire, but perhaps 10,000 was better than losing all 40,000. Perhaps some honor could be salvaged by ensuring the humans died too. All ships on my mark, Korthak said. Prepare to fire. On the Indomitable, alarms suddenly screamed. Nari looked at her displays in shock. Captain, all Vorn ships are charging their weapons. Energy readings are off the scale. They are going to fire everything at once. Taeyang immediately understood. They are going to ignite the nebula. The entire thing will become a fireball. We cannot survive that, Jinwoo said. The gas is too thick here. The explosion will vaporize us. Taeyang thought fast. They had minutes at most before the Vorn fired. There was no time to fly out of the nebula. Even if they tried, the Vorn would fire before they could escape. They needed another option. Then he remembered something Jinwoo had mentioned days ago. Jinwoo, those emergency FTL beacons you installed throughout the nebula. Can they create micro-jumps? Yes, sir. Very short, faster than light jumps. Maybe 5 or 10 kilometers. But those jumps are random. We cannot control where ships end up exactly. Can our ship survive 20 random micro-jumps in quick succession? Jinwoo's eyes went wide. In theory, yes. The jumps are so short that the stress would be minimal. But sir, jumping during combat violates Rule 39. Random jump navigation violates Rule 40. And using FTL technology this way has never been tested. Then we will test it now, Taeyang said. Program all ships. As soon as the Vorn fire, every human vessel makes 20 random micro-jumps as fast as possible. We will scatter throughout the nebula like popcorn. The Vorn ships cannot do this, Nari said, understanding. They are in tight formation. If they try to copy us, they will collide with each other during the jumps. Exactly, Taeyang said. Activate the beacons. Prepare all ships, Korthak gave the order. Fire. 453 Vorn ships fired their weapons at maximum power. The energy poured into the nebula gas. The gas ignited. A wall of fire spread in all directions at incredible speed. Everything in its path would be destroyed. The human ships vanished. One moment they were there. The next moment they had jumped 5 kilometers away. Then they jumped again. And again. 20 times in 30 seconds. Each ship bouncing randomly through the nebula like a stone skipping across water. The Vorn ships, locked in their tight formations, could not follow. They tried to jump, but their formations meant they would crash into each other. They tried to scatter, but there was no time. The fire reached them first. 212 Vorn ships burned. The crews had seconds to realize their own tactic had killed them. The survivors watched in amazement as the human ships reappeared throughout the nebula, damaged but alive. Korthak sat in his chair, unable to speak. He had tried to fight like the humans. He had broken the rules, and still they had beaten him. They had anticipated his move and countered it with something even more insane. "How many ships do we have left?" he finally asked. 247, Battlemaster. Less than a third of what he had started with, against 15 human ships. The greatest military armada in 3,000 years had been destroyed by a handful of primitives who refused to fight properly. "Sir," his communications officer said nervously, "we are receiving another transmission from the humans." "What now?" Korthak asked wearily. "They are broadcasting on the Vorn honor frequency, sir. The honor frequency was sacred. It was used only for the most important military communications. For the humans to use it was an insult beyond measure." Korthak activated the channel. A voice spoke in perfect Vorn language. It was clearly a computer translation, but the words were unmistakable. "Vorn warriors, hear this message. Your battlemaster has led you to destruction. He has broken his own rules by attempting to burn you alive in the nebula fire. He cares nothing for your honor or your lives. The honorable choice now is to retreat. Your ancestors would understand. To continue fighting is to dishonor their memory. Turn it off." Korthak screamed, but it was too late. The message was being broadcast to every Vorn ship. And worst of all, the humans had included recordings of Korthak giving the order to ignite the nebula. The recordings proved that a Vorn commander had been willing to kill his own warriors. This violated Rule 46. The humans had weaponized Vorn culture itself. They had taken the importance Vorn placed on honor and ancestry and turned it into a weapon of psychological warfare. 12 Vorn ships broke formation and began retreating. Their captains could not reconcile what they had heard. The confusion spread. More ships hesitated. Some demanded explanations from Korthak. While the Vorn fleet descended into chaos, the human ships attacked again. They targeted command vessels. They used their electronic warfare to jam communications. They spread false orders claiming retreat was authorized. The Vorn fleet, already demoralized and confused, began to fall apart. Korthak knew he had lost. Not just the battle, but something far more important. He had lost the moral certainty that came from following the rules. The humans had forced him to break his own code, and in doing so, they had destroyed him more completely than any weapon could have. "All ships," he said quietly. "Retreat." Return to Vorn space, but Taeyang was not done. As the Vorn ships began their retreat, he gave one final order. "Fire on the retreating vessels." Nari looked at him in shock. "Captain, Rule 47. We must show mercy to defeated enemies. They are retreating. The battle is over." "The battle is not over until they are too broken to come back," Taeyang said. His voice was hard. "I will not give them the chance to regroup and attack our colonies again. Fire until they launch their escape pods." It was the cruelest order of all. To fire on enemies who were trying to leave. To show no mercy to the defeated. It violated the most sacred rule of civilized warfare. But Taeyang had learned something during this battle. Mercy was a luxury. Honor was a luxury. Rules were a luxury, and humanity could not afford luxuries when survival was at stake. The human fleet fired on the retreating Vorn ships. They did not destroy them all. They damaged them enough that crews had to abandon ship. Escape pods filled the nebula. Hundreds of them. Thousands of Vorn warriors floating in small pods, watching their ships burn. When it was done, 87 Vorn ships limped away from the nebula. 760 had entered. The Grand Armada had ceased to exist. Taeyang sat in his chair and stared at the tactical display. The blue dots remained. 15 human ships, They had bought 72 hours for the civilian evacuation. They had done the impossible. But Taeyang felt no joy. He had won by becoming something worse than his enemy. He had broken every rule. He had shown no mercy. He had fought with a ruthlessness that would shock the galaxy. "Captain," Nari said softly, "we did it. We held them." "Yes," Taeyang said. "But at what cost?" "Not the cost in ships or lives. The cost in humanity's soul. They had proven they could fight without honor. They had proven they could win by being more brutal than their enemies. They had proven that when survival was at stake, no rule was too sacred to break. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. And Taeyang was not sure if that was a victory or a tragedy. "Send a message to Admiral Beck," he said. "Tell her the evacuation is complete. The colonies are safe. And tell her," he paused, "tell her that humanity has learned a terrible lesson today. We have learned that we can win by being monsters. I hope we also learn when to stop." The battle was over, but the consequences were just beginning. 3 weeks after the Battle of Zephyr Nebula, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The chamber was filled with representatives from 200 species. All of them had watched the battle recordings. All of them had seen what humanity had done. The head counselor, a being whose species had been part of the council for 6,000 years, spoke first. "We are here to discuss the human violations of the Covenant of Civilized Warfare. Captain Taeyang Ko and Admiral Hana Bayek are charged with breaking all 47 rules. They are charged with war crimes. They are charged with bringing barbarism back to a civilized galaxy." Taeyang stood in the center of the chamber. He wore his uniform but no weapons. He had been told this was a trial, not a battle. Though after the past weeks he was not sure there was a difference. "Captain Ko, do you deny the charges?" the counselor asked. "No," Taeyang said simply. "We broke every rule. We fought without honor. We showed no mercy. Everything you say is true." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Species that had followed the rules for thousands of years demanded justice. They wanted humanity expelled from galactic society. Some wanted Earth blockaded. A few even suggested humanity should be forcibly returned to a pre-spaceflight civilization. "Then you admit you are criminals," the counselor said. "No," Taeyang said. "I admit we broke your rules. But I do not admit that survival is a crime." He walked forward, looking at the assembled species. 3 weeks ago, the Vorn Empire came to exterminate humanity. Not to conquer us. Not to defeat us in honorable combat. To exterminate us. They brought 847 ships. We had 23. "You should have surrendered," one counselor said. "The Covenant requires that you accept defeat when resistance is hopeless." "And then what?" Taeyang asked. "We return to Earth and wait for the next empire that decides we are inconvenient? We follow your rules and die politely? You could have appealed to the Council for protection," another counselor said. Taeyang laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "We did appeal. The Council told us the Vorn claim was valid. The Council told us to surrender. The Council abandoned us because we have only been members for 20 years, and the Vorn have been members for 2,000. "That is politics," the counselor said. "It is not relevant to the rules of warfare." "Then your rules are worthless," Taeyang said flatly. "Rules that only work when everyone has equal power are not rules. They are privileges of the strong. The Covenant is designed to ensure that wars can be fought without threatening the established powers. It keeps everything stable and predictable." He looked around the chamber. "But we were not trying to keep things stable. We were trying to survive, and survival does not care about your 10,000 years of tradition." The chamber went silent. No one had ever spoken to the Council this way. But Taeyang was not finished. "You call us barbaric. You call us uncivilized. But let me ask you something. How many of your species have ever faced extinction? How many of you have ever fought a battle where losing meant your entire civilization would disappear?" No one answered. "That is what I thought," Taeyang said. "You wrote your rules when you were all roughly equal in power. When war was about territory and resources, not survival. Your rules make wars less destructive because no one actually wants to destroy their enemy completely. You want to defeat them, take what you want, then go home." "That is civilized behavior," a counselor said. "That is luxury," Taeyang replied. "And humanity could not afford that luxury. So we fought the only way we knew how. We fought to win." Admiral Hana Beck stepped forward. She had been silent until now. "The Council has a choice to make," she said. "You can punish humanity for breaking the rules. You can expel us. You can blockade our worlds. But if you do, you will learn something important. And what is that? The head counselor asked. That humanity is very good at surviving when everyone else wants us dead, Hana said. We fought the Vorn and won. If you make yourselves our enemy, we will fight you too, and we will use every trick, every tactic, every violation of your rules to survive. Is that what you want? Do you want to create an enemy that fights without limits? The threat hung in the air. The council had seen what humanity could do. They did not want to face it themselves. Or, Hana continued, you can accept that the galaxy has changed, that humanity has shown you something you did not want to see, that your rules only work when everyone agrees to lose the same way. For 3 hours, the council debated. Species argued. Factions formed. Some wanted to punish humanity severely. Others wanted to understand how humans had won. A few wanted to hire human military advisors. Finally, the head counselor spoke. We cannot ignore that humanity broke every rule. But we also cannot ignore why they broke them. The council has decided that Captain Ko and Admiral Beck will not face war crimes charges. Taeyang felt relief wash over him. But the counselor was not finished. However, humanity has created a problem. Other species are now asking why they should follow the rules when humans can win by breaking them. 17 species have already formally requested to leave the Covenant. The counselor looked at Taeyang. You have broken our galaxy, Captain Ko. You have shown everyone that the rules are not absolute. You have given hope to every oppressed species and fear to every powerful empire. The question now is what we do about it. Taeyang stood straight. With respect, Counselor, the galaxy was already broken. You just did not see it because the rules hid the cracks. We exposed those cracks. What happens next is up to you. Over the next months, the galaxy transformed. The Galactic Council did not collapse, but it changed. Some species maintained the old rules among themselves. They valued honor and tradition too much to abandon them. But other species adopted human tactics. They hired human advisors. They studied the Battle of Zephyr Nebula like it was a sacred text. They learned that winning was more important than losing honorably. The Vorn Empire fell apart. Their mythology of invincibility had been destroyed. Different Vorn factions fought each other, each claiming they would restore true honor. The empire that had controlled a third of the galaxy for 2,000 years shattered in less than a year. Earth and 17 other species formed the Free Worlds Coalition. Their military doctrine was simple: fight to win, but once you win, help rebuild. They did not follow the old rules, but they created new ones based on practical survival rather than ancient tradition. Captain Taeyang was promoted to admiral. He commanded humanity's growing fleet, but he never forgot the cost of his victory. He had proven that humans could win by being ruthless. Now he had to prove they could also choose to be merciful when survival was not at stake. Lieutenant Nari became the youngest ship captain in human history. She taught other species about creative tactics and unconventional thinking. Commander Jinwoo started an engineering school where he taught alien students that any technology could be weaponized if you were creative enough. Admiral Hana Beck retired. But before she did, she wrote a doctrine that became required reading in every military academy in the Free Worlds Coalition. It was called the Survival Principle. The key passage read, "Rules in warfare are useful tools. They can prevent unnecessary destruction and preserve civilization, but survival is the only rule that can never be broken. Know when to follow tradition, and know when tradition will kill you." 20 years after the Battle of Zephyr Nebula, the Galactic Council added a 48th rule to the Covenant of Civilized Warfare. It read, "All previous rules may be suspended when a species faces extinction. Survival supersedes honor." It was a compromise. The old powers could maintain their traditions, but the vulnerable species now had the official right to fight desperately when necessary. The galaxy had accepted that humans were correct. Rules were privileges, not absolutes. Taeyang stood in his office, now an old man of 68. He looked at the memorial wall. It listed the names of every human who had died in the Battle of Zephyr Nebula. 4,200 names, 4,200 people who had died so humanity could survive. Was it worth it? Nari asked. She was visiting, now an admiral herself. "I do not know," Taeyang admitted. "We saved our species. We changed the galaxy, but we also showed everyone that we could be monsters when necessary. I am not sure if the galaxy is better or worse for what we did." "The 17 species that joined us think it is better," Nari said. "They were being slowly crushed by larger empires. Now they have hope. And the larger empires now fear us, Taiyang said. Fear is not a good foundation for peace. No, Nari agreed. But it is better than extinction. Taiyang nodded. That was the truth of it. Humanity had faced a choice, die with honor or survive without it. They had chosen survival. And the galaxy had learned a lesson it did not want to learn, that humans would do whatever it took to survive, that they would break any rule, violate any tradition and become whatever they needed to become, that they were the species that refused to lose politely. The galaxy had 47 rules of war that had stood for 10,000 years. Humanity had broken all of them in one battle, and in doing so, they had proven that survival was the only rule that truly mattered. History would argue for centuries about whether humanity was a force for good or a destructive influence, but everyone agreed on one thing: the galaxy had changed forever.